Hello and welcome to our webinar today. I want to thank you for joining us. Today we're going to talk about proximity marketing beyond Google Nearby, which I know all of you are aware has had some developments in the last 2 weeks. So in today's session, we're going to talk about how we're all going to take proximity marketing to the next level in 2019. I know some of you are joining from different time zones all over the world. So thanks again for joining us. The format for the session today will be that I will go over a presentation for the first 25 minutes, and we will have Q&A at the end. You can feel free to type in your questions into the chat window, and I'll answer them all at the end. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say, and so let's get started. All right, in today's session, we're going to talk about what really happened with Google Nearby, what the options are for proximity marketers like us, what it is that BeaconStack here is doing for the ecosystem, and how it is that we plan to essentially take this forward for everyone in the ecosystem through innovation that all of us can contribute to, what it is that NearBee, the app that we announced, what it has, what its unique features are, and how you can make use of them. We're also going to talk a little bit about a pretty common question, which is, will consumers download an app like NearBee or the NearBee app itself, and how you can leverage NearBee for your business. If you own a store or a retail location, how is it that you can get consumers to install NearBee and use it to communicate with them? We also have a couple of ideas on how you can promote NearBee for your own business through various channels, and then of course in the end we'll take any questions from the audience. I think that's essentially what it is that we're going to talk over today. Excuse me, I think, yeah, right. So the big elephant in the room, Google Nearby. What did they do? Google announced that they have decided to discontinue nearby notifications on Android devices starting the 6th of December 2018. What that means is essentially Android devices will stop looking for beacons or will stop showing nearby notifications as they used to, and they have been for the last 3 years from the 6th of December. This is, of course, a pretty major development because a lot of us in the ecosystem were relying on Google Nearby, which is installed on every Android device to deliver notifications without having an app necessarily installed on that device. And that was one of the main promises of Google Nearby. There, of course, have been many reasons that Google claims that it's decided to turn this off. But even as a proximity marketing provider, we've seen a lot of problems with Nearby over the last 1 or 2 years. We've seen all kinds of problems related to notifications themselves. They have the problem of being silent or passive notifications. They were not deterministic. There were many algorithms and filters being applied that people didn't understand. Google never really clarified what it is that it was doing underneath the hood, and it never published clear guidelines. So all of this really essentially compounded what is essentially the fact that there was a lot of beacons out there. There are still a lot of beacons out there trying to leverage the Nearby platform, but essentially it was never good enough for us to really take to the next level. So anyway, here we are. Google has decided to discontinue Nearby notifications on Android. And so what does that mean? It means one thing and one thing only, which is from this point on, you need an app. An app is absolutely required to send beacon notifications to a consumer. Without an app, there is currently no way to send any kind of beacon-powered notifications on an Android device. Now, I'm sure all of you are already aware that on iPhone or on the iOS platform, you always needed an app. That's something that has never changed as far as iOS is concerned. But on Android now, it's essentially become the exact same thing. You need an app, just as you did on iPhone, on iOS, you need an app on Android as well. That's essentially what this means for all of us, because now we have to find another way of getting to consumers, getting them to opt in to what it is that we want to deliver through our beacons in terms of marketing messages, promotions, and so on. So as Beacon Stack, we decided that this is something that we wanted to tackle. And our approach has been to essentially say, what is it that we can do to make NearBee even better than it was? There were many things we believed, even when we were working with Google NearBee, that were not ideal. There were things like the notifications being passive, the notifications not appearing on the lock screen, there being no way to use alerts or sounds or anything like that that's native to these devices. The problem of not being able to reach iPhone at the same time and having this disparity between Android devices and iPhone. And all of these things really just made it problematic. Not to mention the fact that it also was not deterministic. You were never quite sure why your campaign would sometimes show up as a notification and sometimes not. So what we decided is we said, okay, can we take NearBee and build on it? And what is it that about Google NearBee that we like? We like the fact that it's based on Eddystone, which is a protocol that Google introduced a few years ago. It's actually a pretty neat protocol. And Eddystone is an alternative to the iBeacon protocol that Apple introduced. Now, most beacons out there will do both protocols. And so it's not something you have to worry about, but just to be clear, the Google Eddystone protocol was the basis for essentially what we were doing with Google NearBee notifications, all of us leveraging the Eddystone protocol fundamentally. So we said, okay, can we take the same thing that everyone's been using the last 2-3 years, 3 years at this point, but everyone's already understood how to use with URLs and HTTPS sites and all of that stuff. How can we just build on top of that? So essentially NearBee has given us that base, and so we've built on top of it. So what we've done is we've built a native app. It's available for both iOS and Android. It is a completely free app, and it will always be free. The job of what NearBee does is essentially it replaces what NearBee was doing on Android, but it does this consistently on both Android and iOS. It scans beacons, it detects beacons, and based on certain conditions being met, which is Eddystone URLs and HTTPS, etc., it will display beacon notifications and allow you to browse and see all the beacons around you, just like Google NearBee did on Android devices. It's of course Eddystone compliant, so it works with all hardware. That's what we've done today. We've essentially, well, I beg your pardon, we announced NearBee 2 weeks ago, but that's essentially what we've done. We said we want to make sure that NearBee is an alternative, but more importantly, it builds on Google NearBee and goes much further than NearBee did. And hopefully with community support and with ecosystem participation, we can make it much better. So with NearBee, essentially, this is what you have today. Now, the fact that Google NearBee is going to be shut down from December 6th, and that we've announced this free app called NearBee, this is essentially what's available to businesses today. You can either go, take your own app if you have one, a brand app as we call it. You can take that, decide to integrate notifications into it through beacons, do the beacon-based integration, SDK, etc. This, of course, applies if you already have an app. Now, keep in mind that the medium to large enterprises, in most cases, already have beacons. I beg your pardon, already have apps. And so it's a matter of, where, so to speak. Now, I'll talk a little more about how. The other option is what we're doing, which is we're offering to every business in the world today the option to use NearBee as is and use it for proximity marketing. Essentially, we want people out there to feel free to use NearBee wherever it is that they need, so essentially for iOS as well as Android. And in particular, we think this is relevant for businesses that don't wish to invest in their own app. And there are many cases where it doesn't make sense for every business to make an app of their own, and especially if it's expensive enough to market an app and so on. We think there are quite a few cases where that's not necessary. So NearBee is an option for everyone who'd like to take advantage of NearBee, an app that we've developed and put out there for anyone to use, and we will continue to keep improving based on feedback and so on. And then, of course, there's go build your own app, and then or take an existing app and enable it with beacons. But essentially, I'm sure some of you are wondering, okay, how is it that this really helps? Why is it that NearBee is going to do better than Google Nearby? What were some of the limitations and so on? So that's a great question, and that's what we want to address right on, right? Which is Nearby campaigns click-through rates versus NearBee campaign click-through rates. This is data that we got from our own network, and this is something that we were seeing. Nearby campaigns, because of their passive notifications and not being visible on the lock screen, disappearing if you were out of range of the beacon and so on, were essentially leading to lower and lower CTR over time. And what we noticed is when campaigns were run on NearBee, and of course, as some of you may be aware, NearBee has been present on iOS for a few months now. NearBee campaigns, on the other hand, had much better CTR, averaging about 10%. And that's not surprising, because if you've worked with apps and if you work with push notifications, you know that push notifications are really effective in getting through to consumers, and there's a really good click-through rate when you deliver a push notification through an app. So I think this is something which is one of the real advantages of the direction that we're all going to head in, which is you're going to be able to run campaigns on NearBee. Granted, you have to get someone to install the app, but once you do, the likelihood that your campaigns are reaching them is a lot higher. So how is it that we've improved on Google Nearby, right? What is it that we've done with NearBee? So again, just to be clear, there are three main things that we've done which make these a lot more compelling. One, you get notifications right on the lock screen. So your phone's locked, you're not looking at it, you're not scrolling and swiping and doing anything like that. If you enter a zone, which is a beacon-enabled zone, and NearBee applies an algorithm and it detects a number of beacons, it'll basically scan the beacons, apply the Eddystone protocol as defined in the spec, and then show the beacons that are visible on the lock screen in a format like this that you see on the right side. Essentially, that's what it's doing. It's doing what Google Nearby did, and in exactly the same way, except that we put it on the lock screen. So that's one thing that makes this a pretty big change in terms of just how effective it is. The second thing is that it's not a silent notification, which means that there's a ringtone or alert attached to it. The way NearBee works is that the person, the user, can actually control this if they want to change the alert tone, they want to do things like that, make it a vibrate, etc. All of that is possible, and it's completely configurable. So that's one thing which we've also done with NearBee. I also mentioned another thing, which is not only is it on the lock screen and it's actually active, the other thing is that even if you walk out of the beacon zone, the notification that has been delivered to your device already will remain there. And this was not the case with Google Nearby. With Google Nearby, if you walked away, that notification would disappear. And so there was this very slim chance that someone would look at a notification exactly at the time that they're in the zone, and not even like a few feet away from the zone. And that's one of the things that we've addressed, again, with our NearBee implementation. And then the third thing, which I think is really powerful, is that we have really rich notifications. We're bringing to NearBee the ability to do full-size images. We're going to work on whatever it is that Android and iOS give us in terms of just what you can do with the multimedia formats. And then, of course, these notifications, when tapped, will directly open up the landing pages, the markdown cards, or whatever it is, or the video that you may have attached to it. Essentially, really rich media leading to a click-through and leading to a landing page. All of that's possible right from the lock screen itself. So when they get a notification, they can interact with it, interact with these notifications. So essentially, that's what we've done with NearBee. We have this app. It's a really simple app right now, but I think you'll find that if you start using it, if you start getting consumers to use it, you'll find that it's actually an improvement over what existed, or I guess still exists on Android device, at least until the 6th of December. And so that's what I wanted to say in terms of just covering what NearBee the app does. Now, of course, the question is, will consumers download the NearBee app? I'm sure this is something that you're thinking about. We've received a lot of queries about this, and we think that there's a very good reason why consumers will download it, and there's data to show that they will. Here's data point number one. There's 90% of smartphone users, and this is actually a survey that was done. This is data that we have, which says that smartphone users have at least one subscription to a deal or rewards app. And there are a lot of good ones out there that are already something that consumers care about. So consumers do care about local rewards, deals, promotions, and things like that. So that's one thing that's been established. And so it's not like we're trying to go and get consumers to do something that they don't care about. They do. The second thing is that it's also been proven that consumers want a better experience inside the store. They want to be able to see what promotions there are. They want to be able to see purchase suggestions, product reviews, size availability in certain cases, if it's like clothing and that kind of stuff, apparel. So there's a lot of things that consumers would like to get on their smartphones, but they can get that if it's delivered through an app. And so consumers do want or are already seeking a better experience. The question is, can you deliver a better experience? And we think that the way to do that is through beacons and through taking advantage of the things that's available to us through the Eddystone platform and, of course, the NearBee app. We also know that, and this is again from a survey conducted by CSA's Business of Retail, consumers want the option to navigate a personalized in-store experience, and that's something you can deliver inside an app. And this is, I think it boils down to really this, right? Consumers love technology when it's in their control. They don't like it when the technology is doing things that they don't understand. And I think to a large extent, NearBee, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, Google Nearby was also fairly unpredictable in terms of when the notification would appear and when it wouldn't. And this is something that we learned from a lot of our customers, that the unpredictability of it, or the fact that it wasn't deterministic, was also something that created problems when it was used in larger settings and used in places where people were asked to go look at something on their lock screens or on their notification trays, and they didn't see anything or didn't see what they were supposed to see. So these are the kinds of things that make, or I guess they made consumers feel like, hey, this makes no sense. I'm not in control of the tech. And of course, with an app, the other advantage that consumers have is that they can actually decide when they're done with your app, or they don't want to be, bothered with notifications from, say, a certain store or whatever. And they have the ability to mute notifications and do things like that. So it puts them in control. And yes, and I think the last data point here is, by Pew Research, consumers are already looking for location-based information and offers. And this is something that's just been growing and growing over the years. So we know all of these things already, which is why we think NearBee is most certainly an app that folks will be willing to try out, given what we know about consumers and what they're seeking as far as local deals, etc., are concerned. So, which brings us to essentially, what is it that a business today can do with NearBee, and what is it that we offer? There are essentially three things that you can do with NearBee. And this is where I'm going to go into a few specifics, technical details, and feel free to ask me questions through the chat window, which I will get to at the end of this presentation. But there are three things that you can do with NearBee, and you can choose as a business how you want to engage with NearBee. One is you can use NearBee, the app. It's a free app. It's on both iOS and Android, the app stores. Anyone can download it and start using it. It doesn't ask you to sign in. It doesn't collect any personal information. It just works out of the box. You can use NearBee, ask consumers to download it, and use it to communicate with them through notifications and cards and surveys or whatever it is that you want to do. The second thing that you can do And this is the option that we as Beacon Stack give you, is you can white label the NearBee app. You can come to us, you can say, look, I like the NearBee app, but I want to put my name and my logo on it, and then I'm going to market it under a different name. And that's completely fine. You're welcome to come and talk to us about it. Essentially, it would be the NearBee app, but just branded differently for your specific market or for your specific target segment that it is that you may be going after, which requires it to be something other than NearBee with different logos and colors. So that's the second option that you have, which is to white label the NearBee app. The third option, and this is a really powerful option, is that you can actually take the NearBee SDK, which we're making available, and take that SDK and integrate it into an existing app. And this we think is really powerful, right? Because you may have an existing app that you've built already for your customers, or they may have an app already, which they may say, all right, I have a developer, or I use a tool, I use a platform like Shoutem or some such, or business apps or something, and I'd like to integrate NearBee into it so that my app is now beacon aware. And guess what? You can do that. So with NearBee, the SDK, which we're making available, you can essentially integrate the NearBee SDK in your existing app. And then that essentially makes your app respond to your beacons, pop lock screen notifications, and all that good stuff that I talked about. Of course, in this case, the app would only respond to beacons that belong to you. It wouldn't respond to beacons that belong to other retailers and other customers of Beacon Stack, or anyone that's on the network, basically. So those are the three options available to a business today. You can do the SDK, you can white label the NearBee app, or you can just use the NearBee app as is. The NearBee app is free, and you can just go ahead and do whatever you want in terms of getting folks to use it and then sending messages to it. So I want to shift gears here, and at this point, it's an important question. A lot of you must be thinking, okay, all right, NearBee sounds good. What's the benefit? Why is it that a bunch of retailers should come together and actually promote an app like NearBee? And I think the answer really boils down to essentially just two things, right? One, there's no investment required. NearBee is a neutral app. It works out of the box. There's no investment required. There's no money to be paid. All you have to do is just start spreading the word, telling your consumers that, hey, we're going to send you messages and offers through NearBee, just install it. And the benefit of co-promoting it, so let's say you have a bunch of retailers on a street, everyone's using NearBee. The benefit is every store is helping every other store, in the sense that if store A acquires 5 users and gets them onto the platform, gets them to install NearBee, guess what? The 10 other stores on that street now benefit, because the users who happen to be coming to that store or happen to be coming to that street frequently already have the NearBee app. So they're going to start seeing the messages that are present on all the other stores in that neighborhood. So there's a lot of benefit to using NearBee as is. There's no need to invest in an app. There's no need to maintain it. There's no budget required. Pretty much nothing. All you have to do is decide to commit that NearBee is the app that you will use to communicate with consumers, and then that's it. You just start going. Essentially, you start promoting NearBee. And there are actually some pretty interesting ways you can promote an app so that consumers are aware that they ought to be installing it. This is, of course, this is something a lot of folks have done, and this works. So we have some ideas that we wanted to just present to you guys. You can print app QR codes. You can put them up on posters. You can put them on flyers, put them on your bags, and just really anywhere that you think is appropriate. You can let people know that NearBee is the way that you're going to send them promotions and marketing messages and so on. So that's one way to do it. Another thing that that you could try is start promoting the app on social media. Let your folks know that. Tell people on your Facebook page. Tell people on your Twitter profile that we're using NearBee. When you walk into our store, NearBee is the app that will tell you about what we have and how you can use NearBee to communicate with us. And we will use NearBee to communicate with you. Essentially, you can spread that message on social media. You can also promote NearBee as a local content source, in the sense that, it could be that, the NearBee app is a way to discover the 10 things to do, let's say in San Diego, and let's say in a certain neighborhood of San Diego. And these are essentially really interesting material that you can discover because of the beacons, and because they're pointed to the web pages that have all this interesting content. So one could just be that neighborhoods and cities also promote NearBee and leverage NearBee to essentially help citizens and residents and even tourists discover content. Another thing to do is, of course, you host events, or partner with events that are happening already, and then you essentially all agree to use the NearBee app. So the events using the NearBee app, you get the benefit as well, and vice versa. So these are all things that you can try. And of course, last but not the least is email, which is a very effective way to get folks to and to know that, hey, there is this app called NearBee that I can use, and then Acme company is going to send me messages when I enter their stores through this app. So email is a pretty effective mechanism to get this to get the word out. Essentially, that's what I wanted to cover, at least from the standpoint of our presentation. At this point, I'm happy to answer questions and start taking anything that you guys would like me to talk about. All right, I think you can type into the chat window, and I'll pick up the questions one by one. Right, I'm going to go over these questions. Give me a few minutes to just go over them very quickly, and then I'm going to come back and make sure that I have everyone covered. So, yes, does NearBee have or leverage maps for location, direction, etc.? That's a great question. We are absolutely bringing maps to NearBee. That is something that we have on the roadmap. And actually, that's one thing that I wanted to cover. Sorry, I completely forgot. We will be publishing the NearBee roadmap on a public Trello board. So that's something that you guys can certainly follow, and we'll welcome feedback and suggestions from the community. But yes, we will be bringing maps and location and those kinds of things to NearBee. Now, another question is this all app-based? Yes, it's all app-based, and all happens only inside a native app, in the sense that the notification is delivered through a native app. Now, once the notification is delivered, of course, when you tap the notification, it can open up a web page, or it can open up another app, and that's called app intent. Those are all things that depend on the kind of notification you're sending. But yes, it does require an app to be delivered. And yes, the way I described it is the NearBee app has to be installed for notifications to be delivered the way we've described it. Some of you may be wondering, okay, I just installed the NearBee app. Why doesn't it work for my beacons? We have an article on our help center which tells you exactly what the requirements are for your beacons to be detected by NearBee, and we'll send you the link. Essentially, that's, if you read that article, it'll tell you exactly what you need to do. In some cases, your beacons may not be detected, but once you essentially address that, which is mentioned in that article, your beacons will show up. All right, I think there are some questions around who do we contact to, white label NearBee, etc. Please get in touch with us at BeaconStack. The way to do that is to come to our beaconstack.com and essentially schedule a demo. You see an option on the top right that says schedule a demo with our sales team, and they will walk you through everything that you get. And then let me see what else. Yeah, we will send you the PDF of this presentation. We will send you a PDF of this presentation after all this is done. Somebody's asking about HTTPS. Okay, HTTPS essentially is the same requirement that Google Nearby has had forever, which is that all URLs, all Eddystone URLs that you point at through beacons must be secure, which is HTTPS secure. We enforce the same requirement because that keeps us all safer and it's better for the web. So only HTTPS URLs are allowed. There's a question here about what BeaconStack is doing to promote NearBee on app stores. Yes, that's a great question. Wanted to let you know that we're currently in the process of actually kickstarting NearBee app install campaigns. So we're going to be spending some of our own marketing dollars on spreading the app, the NearBee app, getting installs on app stores, both iOS and Android. We're going to spread the word on social media. We're using all the channels that we have available to do that. Excuse me. And also, we are in the process of partnering with larger apps that already exist on many devices and finding a way for us to partner with them so that NearBee, the SDK, is available on those apps, and those apps therefore are in a position to deliver beacon notifications. That is something that we're working on as well. There's a question here about how to integrate the SDK into the Shoutem app platform or the business apps platform. We will be publishing, once we publish those extensions for the Shoutem platform and even the SDKs, we will include instructions on how to do that. There's a question about how to do app intent for NearBee. The current version of NearBee doesn't yet have app intent. The next version will. We will be publishing information in our help center, available on docs.beaconstack.com. We have a separate section there for NearBee. It will contain all the information on how to use app intent in NearBee when we release that. At the present moment, the current version of NearBee doesn't have app intent working. So there's a question here also that if one store app has the SDK integrated into their app, they won't work for another store. I was not talking about the NearBee app. This year, I'm talking about the case where if you are a chain of stores, let's say you're Subway, and you decide to integrate with beacons in your own app, Subway may not be happy. Probably is not going to want the Subway app waking up when it enters, let's say, a store, a competing food, restaurant chain like, say, KFC or McDonald's or something. So essentially, there's a mechanism in the NearBee SDK to make sure that your app is only responding to your beacons and not other beacons out there in the wild. There's a question about GDPR. Yes, BeaconStack is completely GDPR compliant, user tracking and so on. We've updated all our policies, our privacy policies. We will be sharing more information about that as we do more user tracking in NearBee in terms of being compliant with GDPR. So stay tuned. We will have more information again on our help center when we have that available. There are questions about when NearBee will be updated. Well, NearBee, we're going to be releasing updates to NearBee almost, the current cadence is every 2 weeks. So we have a lot of development planned. We have a lot of features that we have planned. So NearBee will be updated essentially on a continuous basis. And when we say continuous, we mean literally every 2 weeks, but certainly at least once a month, because there's just going to be so many things we're going to add to it. Not to make it heavy, but in terms of just what we think are features that ought to exist in the platform. And NearBee will integrate with Facebook Pixel. Yes, absolutely. Facebook Pixel and Google AdWords. That's absolutely something that it will do and will support. Right. I think there's concern that the way now that there's an app is required, this is going to make it much harder to convince retailers and businesses, and it kind of defeats the selling point. I mean, it's a fair point, but the truth is that an app is required from this point on, as there's really no way for us to change that, because that's the way iOS and Android have decided to take things forward. So what we see is, in terms of the path ahead of us, is really to find the best ways to engage with consumers And we have to innovate to do that. That's really the only way to do it. I think that was pretty much it. I think we're reaching the end of the Q&A list. I think there are some suggestions on offering incentives to current customers to run campaigns promoting NearBee. That's a great idea. Thank you. We will keep that in mind. And then I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. I think there is a question also. I think I answered all of them. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for today. Thank you again for joining us on this webinar, and stay tuned. We'll have many more updates coming your way as far as NearBee is concerned. NearBee the app, NearBee through the SDK, and the white label version as well. Please stay in touch, and once again, thank you. I just wanted to add very quickly that there is a URL that you can go to where you can see the public, Trello board where we have where we're publishing exactly what we're doing with NearBee and the features. So I'm going to send that URL to you guys. Just give me 1 second. And that URL is right here. It's coming up right now in the chat window. Yes, that's our public Trello board that we're going to maintain for NearBee. So go ahead, and tell us, bookmark that Trello board URL, and feel free to come back and give us suggestions as we continue to develop NearBee. And that's it. Thanks a lot, folks. Bye.